Hello, and welcome to Martinis and Bikinis, the podcast for everything under the sun. I am your hostess, Veronica Droulia, and I am here to help you navigate your 20s through all things lifestyle, beauty, and fashion. So, if you're ready, let's dive into today's episode.
I remember when I first got engaged, I was like, I'm not gonna be one of those girls who like goes crazy with their wedding. And like you do go crazy with your wedding. But it's
it's just the one time, that you're gonna do it.
And like,
so.
But it's like the best time too.
Yeah.
Like it was really like the most fun thing I've ever done was plan my wedding.
It looked incredible. Like you guys just looked like you had so much fun.
We really did.
And the venue and like the decorations, like the decor,
like if anybody needs
the
a
floral
wedding,
arrangement.
When you need any sort of party planner, I cannot recommend my wedding planner enough because she also did all of the florals. So she's not just the planner.
She put them together.
She's also the florist. And like
that's wild.
When she obviously gave me like the design deck, she had the whole mood board, like she had laid everything out. And I was really excited when she had told me everything. But then when I saw it in person the day of, I was really like
just caught off guard.
Whoa! Like I like teared up when I saw our reception.
I mean, it was
space.
stunning.
It was
like I haven't seen like a floral arrangement and like a setup like that in a very long time.
It was beyond my wildest dreams. Like truly, like first of all, I am a crier. I do cry like all the time. Not all the time, but like I cry a lot. And the day of my wedding, I cried so much. I cried like in the best way. Like I cried putting on my dress. I cried seeing my reception. I cried when I saw Max for the first time. I cried when I said my vows. And it was funny. I also like got really close to my makeup artist, who's also wonderful. And she was so funny because I had asked her, I was like, Elena, what do I do if I start crying again? And she was like, well, you cry during the first look. And that usually like, usually once brides like crack the tears, like you'll be fine, because Elena left me like right as we started the ceremony because it like you book her by the hour and I had her like until like 5:30. So, these people are also with you all day. And, she had fixed my makeup after the first look, which wasn't as much of a cry, but the vows, I'm telling you, I was like so caught off guard for that. Just like I choked completely in like a good way, but like I really ugly cried during my vows.
Oh,
it was a big day of emotion.
I love that for you.
Like
you really were present.
I was really present, and I feel like I like did a lot actually leading up to my wedding to help me get there because it is stressful. And like, I mean, I think this bleeds into a lot of my professional life too. And even like, I think for a lot of one of the pain points that I talk with a lot of my clients about is definitely body image. Social media pulls into that. And like, it was no exception for my wedding. Mm-hmm. And I did a lot of prep to get to that point where I knew like the day of my wedding, I would be like completely blissed out and not like focused on noise that like would drag me down, if that makes sense. Right. Like I think like I actually stayed off of social media in the weeks leading up to my wedding, and that was actually really helpful because I think if I had been really plugged in leading up to my wedding, I would have been really distracted and like still in like a bad rhythm of being like, okay, like judging my body on social or like bringing that in or seeing other bodies on social media or even just with weddings in general. I mean, like, I don't know if it hits your algorithm, but wedding talk is insane.
It's crazy. I have a friend who has made a whole career off of bridal TikTok.
Totally.
And that's actually something I wanted to talk to you about because I feel like a lot of brides, they start preparing for their wedding and they just go like ham in the gym, or they'll hire a personal trainer.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've seen it from both sides now, as a bride and as a trainer, and I can give you the advice.
Give us the
advice. We can chat about it. But like you do. And like I actually, and this like is a story, I don't know if we want to like touch on it when we start like recording at all. Or
are we recording? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay,
I had a feeling we were.
Groovy. But like I was actually so bloated the night of my wedding. So bloated. And like in a way where I knew, and I've been in those shoes before, like with my body image where like, when you're having a bad body image day and then you are bloated and, and I think like bloat is actually also a very like trendy topic and something that comes up with a lot of my clients currently where they're like, sometimes I get so bloated. And I'm like, well, that's like normal, like sometimes we eat things and they make us bloated and we have a little tummy for a little bit and we get over it and we put on stretchy pants and the next day we wake up and we hydrate and it's not so bad. But I can tell you, I was so bloated the night of my wedding. I think I was actually like my stomach was in knots like all day, like from sheer excitement. And also like leading up to my wedding, I had been, I try not to use this term, but there's no other term for it. I was eating really clean. I wasn't eating anything processed. I wasn't drinking. And I was on a pretty like vanilla diet. And what I mean by that is, like I was eating the same stuff on repeat. Like I was having a lot of smoothies, I was having a lot of salads. So of course we get to the rehearsal dinner and you finally have planned, like you've been planning this amazing dinner for months and like it's your wedding weekend. And at that point, I was also just like in such like, fuck it, I want to eat mode.
Right.
And like I was eating but ricotta and like drinking champagne. And like the night before my wedding, was that necessarily the smartest move? No, maybe not. But like it's your wedding. You should enjoy it. And I wanted to.
You made it to the end.
Exactly. And then Saturday, my stomach was in knots. You're so excited. Like I can tell you, actually the week leading up to my wedding, in terms of like my body physically, my husband and I barely slept. Like we would literally wake up in the middle of the night from sheer excitement and adrenaline. And we would like poke each other and be like, 2 more days to the wedding, 1 more day to the wedding. Oh my God, we get married. It really takes a toll on you physically. And it's crazy because I've never felt like that before in my body. But Saturday, the day of the wedding, I woke up and I knew. I was just like, okay, I'm like really bloated today. It is what it is. Like, fortunately, my dress was a ball gown, which I actually picked strategically when I was dress shopping because I knew if I had something form-fitting, and this is just me knowing my body, I would have been, I think, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, like in terms of like, you know how it is. Like sometimes when you're like, oh, like I have to be so snatched. And when you wear a dress that like shows any little thing, like you're extra just mindful of it. And I just didn't want that stress going into my wedding. But I can tell you, when I talk to clients about this, when they have events and they're coming to me and they're preparing, weddings are obviously a big thing. Any sort of big trips is like another thing that comes up, when I have clients coming to me and they're like, I really need to look good for this certain event. And here's why I think like you need to really take a step back and remember that you got to enjoy the journey of like getting to that point, because if I had been in a place where it mattered to me so much that my stomach had to be so flat, I would have gotten to the night of my wedding and I would have been absolutely wrecked. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
I would have like been a little bloated, like in my reception dress, and it would have really bothered me. But this is why like I remind clients, you can't do that because you're going to make yourself crazy.
Mhm.
And you have to, I think like the best advice when you're preparing for your wedding or any big event is you got to do the workouts and you got to just take care of yourself, because that's what gives you confidence. That's what makes you feel happy. And that's what makes you carry yourself a little bit more, bouncier, a little bit more poised when you've done all the work and then the weekend or that big event comes and you can just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like that's what will make you look and feel so good. It's not about a number on the scale. It's not about, zipping up the tiniest pair of jeans that you own. It's really just about like, okay, I've done all of these workouts. I've put the hard work in. I've done them to the best of my ability. I haven't slacked. I've taken care of my body. I've set boundaries in my life to help me like get to this point. And like that will really let you enjoy it. And that's how I felt the weekend of my wedding. And that's what I really want people to know too when they prepare for big events. Like you could end up getting freak bloat and then it's ruined, Like you
Yeah.
gotta like just breathe and
You want to feel
enjoy.
your best,
Yes.
besides looking your best, I feel like feeling your best probably on your wedding day is the most important part, because you're kind of glowing from the inside out,
Yeah,
despite what your body may look like, and
exactly.
I have had fitness instructors on here before where they talk about how sometimes vanity is what people, kind of start with and it gets them in. But the most important aspect of exercise and movement is the way you feel afterwards.
Yeah.
And I feel like when you said confidence and giving yourself the capacity to do something really challenging before such a big event is like such a badass thing to do. And that's something that people should really appreciate and love about themselves. I think it's amazing.
Totally. And I think I have worked with clients before where they come and they've like never really had a workout regime, and then they have a wedding, or a lot of times it also happens with pregnancies. Women find out that they're pregnant and they're like, "Oh wait, I want to start working out." And that's wonderful. Like anything to get you to start is a good goal. But it really is, like you mentioned, vanity. Like, you usually, most people do come to me with the hopes they want to look better, but then it's like you end up just feeling better, and it becomes such an essential part of your routine. Like sometimes I think people ask me jokingly, like, I don't get how you can work out so much, or I don't get why you do Pilates all the time. But it's like, I don't get how you don't. And I don't say that in a condescending way. It's more, it makes you feel so good. And it becomes as regular to me, it's become as regular to me as brushing my teeth, or, like making my bed. It's something that I really can't live my everyday life without, because it makes you feel good. And that, I think, I really, especially in the past like year and a half, I really had to do a lot of work to figure out what made me feel good, especially working in fitness. Like I went through a phase where I was really lifting heavy, and I felt like I was obligated to, because it's something, and I'm sure like scrolling every day we see it. If you're remotely plugged into like wellness or gym talk, it's like, oh, lift heavy, do this, do that.
Anti-aging benefits.
Exactly. Or like there's the information that we see all the time is so polarizing. And I went through a period of my life where I was teaching for a studio that was really intense and very, I would say, vanity driven. And it really kind of like wrecked me from the inside out. I was working out like crazy. I was lifting heavy. I felt so just obligated to sort of pursue this image of being this really muscular and really fit person. And it was definitely at the cost of my mental health. And it also, strangely enough, I was having this conversation with one of my other friends who's also a trainer. And I can tell you, when I was lifting really heavy and working out the most, my body image and the way I felt about myself was so low, like lower than it ever had been. And there is, I sort of think, an odd, the odds of diminishing returns where, the more you work out, the more obsessed and the more, hyper focused you are on certain things, the more it sort of starts to take away from just enjoying the workout.
Right.
And in the last year, I really made a conscious effort where I really had to take a pause and like say, okay, like whatever happens to my body, whatever it ends up looking like. And that is really, really hard when you work in fitness, because I can tell you, whether or not my clients admit it or not, whether or not people admit it or not, people are looking at my body all day long and deciding, like, oh, I like the way she looks, I want to do what she does. That was really hard for me. But I knew I really had to take a step back and say, okay, like, what do I actually enjoy doing? Like, what do I enjoy? Like, what workouts do I even like anymore? Because I felt like for a while I was in such a robotic routine of like just doing what I thought I should be doing instead of really listening to my body and figuring out what feels good, what makes me happy, what allows me to live my life in a good way too. Because like we could work out all day, but if we're so tired and so sore that we don't have time for our friends or time for our loved ones, or just the energy to like get up, get a coffee, go shopping, and enjoy living in New York City, like that's not a way to live your life either. There has to be balance. And that's something I really tried to do leading up to my wedding that I have to admit and pat myself on the back for, that I ended up being really successful with. So it was like a good journey to take, but it was tough.
Yeah, I feel like it's hard as a fitness instructor to navigate that, because what you said about feeling this pressure to look a certain way so that, your clients can trust you, or, feel like you are a good investment. I feel like that is something that is not talked about enough. And I'm sure that a lot of fitness instructors feel that pressure and that immense need to fill this certain expectation.
Yeah.
And I think that's amazing that that's something that you are discussing, and it's something that you're incorporating into your life, like the balanced approach, and leading with your own intuition, because at the end of the day, that's really what it is. It's not a one size fits all. Fitness is not.
No.
And, I'm someone who likes variety. I like to do Pilates. I like to do a little bit of strength here and there. I like to do HIIT, cardio, whatever.
Yeah.
I think, you kind of have to figure out what works best for you and your body and then go from there. And I think something really, really amazing about you is you've been featured on all these like amazing publications about your journey with fitness and just like your whole personal experience within how you even came into being a Pilates instructor. And I think that you are such a great spokeswoman for that. So if you were to like tell your younger self one thing about just this entire journey, like what would you tell her? And what is like one piece of advice that you think people that are like wanting to like get into the fitness space could really just leverage from?
Yeah, I think something I would tell my younger self is to stay true to you. I think there's so much noise in the fitness industry. And I also think fitness out of anything, any sort of category you can scroll through on social media, the fitness space is really polarizing. And I also think it can sometimes be a really unwelcoming space. One of my biggest pet peeves is when I scroll, there are a couple of very like high profile fit influencers and coaches that I follow. And if they're a kettlebell coach, for example, they'll be like, stop doing your Pilates workouts. They're not helping you. That's not going to be how you build muscle. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you also have these low impact queens who are like, lifting heavy weights totally like wrecked my cortisol and made me into a monster. And I'm like, I understand they're at the end of the day, both of, those two characters are trying to sell what they're selling, whether it's a kettlebell program or whether it's a Pilates program. So, if they want to use those tactics in their marketing, that's up to them. But I think it's really easy when you're starting out in this industry, and even like when you're not even just starting out, even when you're in it, it's really easy to be like, to second guess yourself and think like, what I'm teaching good enough? Or is what I'm doing good enough? Is this the best thing for my body?
Yeah. I even think on like the receiving side, like it ebbs and flows so much. Like
totally.
I've been doing a lot of strength recently and I'm like starting to kind of hyperfixate on certain things because it's something that's new to me. And I think that's something that I wish people would know, like the fitness space and like the whole exercise regime is going to be this ebb and flowing process. And you're going to feel completely different in one workout and then maybe like the next isn't going to work for you. And there are going to be times where you hyperfixate on like certain aspects of your body and nobody's ever going to have this perfect relationship with their body either.
100%.
But if you can walk in there and walk out feeling 1% better, like just about your mental clarity or just your emotional well-being, I think that's all that matters. And I think that there is like a lot of talk on TikTok and Instagram, whatever, about like these aesthetic approaches. But, I don't think that there's like a lot of that is, completely bad. Like some of it is helpful,
It's empowering.
Yeah,
like,
it's empowering.
Like if you feel like your arms are not where you want them to be, and then you do an amazing upper body workout and you feel strong and you feel empowered, I mean, that's great.
Yeah, or if you get results and you're like super proud of yourself, that's incredible.
Exactly. I think that also I struggled for a really long time, even as a coach, and how I wanted to market myself because I don't think there's a lot of middle ground. I think sometimes you stumble across an aesthetics-based coach who's like, do this workout for insanely big glutes, and this is all you have to do for 8 weeks. And you're like, I want to be that girl. But then, in my experience coaching so many different bodies over the last, 6 years I've been doing this, not everybody's gene pool is going to allow them to grow glutes the size of Texas. Like, I'm one of those girls. Like, it doesn't matter how many deadlifts I do. Like, I love my glutes and like, sure, they can grow, but like, I am, I love my mom and dad, but they did not genetically bless me with like big glute muscles, and then on the other side of that, you also have the body neutral coaches and the anti-diet coaches who I think sometimes can at least they make me feel, sometimes I feel like, I want to be hot too, but like, is it a bad thing to want to be hot? Like, no, so I think there is middle ground, and that's always at least what I try to do as a coach and as an instructor. The workouts, and it is my belief, like the workouts that make you feel your best will also make you look your best. And what I mean by that is I do think there is some sort of realistic sort of realization you have to have with yourself and body acceptance you have to have with yourself that like, and it takes a while to be able to look in the mirror and say, this is what I was given and I can do my best with it, but at the end of the day, you can't always change certain aspects of your figure. And I mean, I'm sure if a bodybuilding coach was sitting here or a physique coach was sitting here, they would say, that's not true. Like you could, but you have to ask yourself at what cost?
Right.
One thing that I've accepted about myself, and this is specifically a very hard thing for me as a Pilates instructor sometimes, is that I have a curvier stomach. And, I do have abs and like, that's great. But, sometimes it drives me a little nuts. And this is sometimes why I have to tune out social media because, I mean, how many times do you see a Pilates instructor marketing themselves on Instagram and, with the 6-pack washboard abs and you're like, oh, like, why isn't that me? But like, you have to take a step back and remember like where you came from, where you started from, and like like you can't lose your head, really. Like you have to be realistic and kind to yourself
Absolutely.
about like what you have on your body and accepting that it is good enough. It is. And it takes time to do that.
Yeah, I think it's about like also realizing how fortunate you are to have like a healthy, able body and
100%.
to be completely vulnerable. There was this one time that I was doing nutrition coaching and personal training, and I remember being asked like, what's something that you want to work on? Maybe something that you want to fix. And I remember saying,
it's such a loaded question.
I know, I'm like,
what do you want
everything.
To fix? Nothing's wrong with you.
At the time, I was in a very like vulnerable, naive state. And I just remember being like, oh, like my lower stomach, like the little pooch area, like I would love to like flatten that out.
Yeah.
And I remember this was like so helpful. I remember this man looking at me and saying, well, Veronica, I'm just letting you know that the reason a lot of women have that is because it's protecting a lot of vital organs.
Yes.
And
my dietitian told me the same thing.
And that was like the first time I'd ever thought about that. Like obviously like our reproductive system and all these organs that like basically function our entire body. I never thought, oh my gosh, like I should be so grateful for that.
The most valuable hardware is down there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I think the people with like the washboard abs, like it's all not a facade, but obviously you hear this on repeat, but social media is a highlight reel. And most of the time those people are sucking in, they're flexing, they're getting the perfect lighting. They probably have done like 10 different takes.
Yes.
So you kind of just have to take it with a grain of salt. And, if that's something that empowers you, great. But, don't completely let it like just swayed you away.
That is actually something that comes up in conversation a lot with my clients when they come to me and they're, it's something I try to remind people of is social media is fake. And I think for anyone, who is struggling with their body image, I think one of the best things you can do truly is take a break from social media and really do like a deep, deep, deep purge of who you follow. And even like just be careful like when you're on your explore page, like really use the tools that TikTok and Instagram do give us. Like if something doesn't interest you or if you find something triggering, like say you're not interested and move on. Because I think there is one thing that like does worry me for everyone and not just women, but I truly mean everyone, men too, because men go through a lot of body image issues that, sometimes I think like we only think women go through them. Everybody goes through them.
Absolutely.
But we have, I think, we're really struggling as, a society, as a community, whatever you want to call it, bodies to accept what human bodies actually look like. Like I can't tell you, especially as a Pilates instructor, how many times I've heard from clients, say like, I don't like ab curls or I don't like roll-ups because I get rolls on my stomach when I do them. And when I was earlier on in my teaching career, I would hear that, I would think, well, shit, like I have rolls when I'm doing a roll up, or I'm doing a sit up. Like, so what do you think of me? Like when I heard that feedback from clients about their own bodies, I'm like, oh my God, I hope no one's looking at me when I'm doing the class because I definitely have rolls on my stomach. And it took me a long time and truly like a lot of therapy to realize and to get through this idea like, oh my God, like rolls on a stomach are so normal. social media has just like made them out to be something that's like not flattering, but they exist.
Oh, yeah. Even if you were to like stand up in that class and look around, every single person has that.
Everyone. And I can tell you, like,
and nobody's looking at you.
I look at bodies all day. Everyone has rolls. Everyone has cellulite. Everyone has like weird, kooky things that you think are only about your body, but truly everybody has them. And this is what I mean. Like when we look at social media, those things are sort of erased or, edited out. And I think it's really doing ourselves a lot of harm. And that's why something I've tried to consciously do, back when I first started teaching a lot online, I would watch every single class I recorded and I would go through frame by frame and I would be really harsh to my body. And even when, sometimes I can still find myself slipping up in that, like even sometimes when I'm filming for Instagram or filming for any social media, I'm like, oh my God, I have to redo this exercise. Like, oh, my stomach's hanging out of my leggings, or, oh my God, that's not cute, or whatever it is. And I've come to a point where I'm like, fuck it. Like, I'm going to put that on my Instagram, even if my stomach's like not the most flattering position, because that's how bodies look. That's how all of my clients look when they do it. And when I say all of my clients, they're all different shapes, all different sizes, all different backgrounds, like, I think, need to put that authenticity. And I feel sometimes a responsibility to do that as an instructor, because I don't think there are enough instructors who do that, where, they are filming things 10 million times to get that perfect angle and to make sure that it's edited without, a single cell of body fat hanging over their leggings. And like, that's just not realistic. And I think we need to put that back out there, because people need to remind themselves, like, that's what human bodies look like.
Yeah. I would much rather see like a real body that somebody has worked really hard and challenged themselves with, as opposed to something that's just picture perfect and seems unachievable,
Totally.
So I think that's amazing that you're doing that and you're opening this whole new community, which I think is incredible.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's this line in the fitness industry that I really kind of hate. And it's, oh, my body is my business card.
Oh, yeah.
And I would actually really disagree with that. First of all, my body is actually not my business card. You can look at my clients' bodies and celebrate how strong they are. I know, like sometimes I look at my clients and I'm like, oh my God. And it's not just like looking at them, just now, present day, where I think about like where they came from and where they started. I'm not just talking about aesthetics. Like, I think I do appreciate it as their instructor when I think, oh my God, you came to me on day one and you couldn't lift 5 pounds over your head. And now you're throwing up these big, 25-pound dumbbells like it's nothing. Or as I always joke with a lot of my girls, and I do teach mostly women. So, and I'm definitely a girl's girl. So a lot of my teaching stems with love for that and love for all of the women in my life that I teach. But I call it like the blow dry muscles, like when you're halfway through blow drying your hair and you're like, oh my God, like, I don't know if I can get through. And I'm like, look, now you can blow dry your hair without ever taking a break. Like, isn't that amazing? And, like, I just really like disagree with the statement, like my body, my business card, because those are two, like going back to what we touched on earlier as well, our genetic lotteries and where we came from birth, like, are all going to be different. Like, you can't tell me, like, in my opinion, I think a trainer who maybe started overweight or started from nothing and found fitness later in life and created this amazing body is so much more impressive than a trainer who maybe ran D1 track and was an athlete from the time they could walk and has always been fit. I do find a greater sense of appreciation and respect for trainers and any fitness professional and any client, for that matter, for anyone who has been in a body that hasn't always been healthy, hasn't always been free to move, hasn't always been, naturally athletic. Because I think it speaks volumes about the type of person that they are to kind of overcome that obstacle. Because I think if you're someone who hasn't always been fit, fitness is really intimidating.
Oh, yeah. Like, it's so much less intimidating to have somebody that has been through that journey and has been able to hold your hand and walk you through the process, as opposed to somebody that maybe already had the foundation.
Totally.
And I remember in my earlier years, whenever I first got started with fitness, I would take these classes with these almost like professional athletes.
Yeah.
And I would leave so traumatized.
I mean, have you seen the front row of any group fitness class in New York City? Like, it is intimidating.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, women in New York, I mean, really anywhere, but I gotta say, like, especially in New York City fitness, even in comparison to what I've done out in LA, is like a different stratosphere.
Mm-hmm.
These women walk in like they are walking into the Super Bowl. And it could just be like a Monday, 6 a.m. bar class. And you know they are not messing around. Like they come in ready to kill.
Oh, yeah.
And if you are someone who is maybe like walking into their first ever bar class and you see that front row lining up, you're going to like pee your pants. Like it is not easy to be in a room with that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
especially I find it more true in the Pilates and like sculpty space. And I think like Soul Cycle at its heyday.
I was actually going to mention that because I remember my first New York Soul Cycle class. It was years ago, but I kind of first got started in the fitness space after college.
Yeah, same.
And I had played competitive volleyball up until high school. And obviously I had 4 years where I didn't really focus on my body and nurturing it and fueling it.
Pizza.
Yeah, I was getting fucked up, let's be honest. And
I was having a good time.
I didn't have time to work out. So anyway, obviously I came to New York and I went to my first Soul Cycle class. And I remember being like, who the fuck are these girls in the front row? Like Pilates mommies just cycling their way through life. And now I've gotten to the front row and I feel very accomplished.
Right? Like you do feel good. You do feel good when you make it to the front row. I will say though, like sometimes I look at my clients and I'm like, imagine if women ran the world. Like, do you see how efficient we are?
Right?
We get in, we learn the routines, we go so hard. I mean, like, we just need some of that energy everywhere else in life, you know? But, like, it is true. I think, like, going back, like, if you are, like, Little Miss Daisy Jones walking in off of the street and you haven't worked out maybe ever, or you haven't really worked out in a year and you're coming into these group fitness classes, like, damn, like, you're about to be swallowed. Like, that is a hard barrier to overcome. And then if you're someone who hasn't worked out really ever, or, you know, you've taken a lot of time off and you're coming into these classes and maybe you are carrying extra weight, or, you know, like I talk about this a lot with like some of my moms, like after they give birth, they feel completely alienated in their bodies sometimes. And they're coming into these classes, and to see that row of like top soldiers in the front row doing everything perfectly, you're going to feel so hurt and isolated. I mean, like I really felt when I started taking Pilates classes, like I was one of those people when I started taking Pilates. I didn't have matching sets. I wore like a ratty pair of leggings and like a sorority t-shirt, and it was like, I mean, I look back and cringe because it's like, you know, when you see someone walking in Murray Hill with like their sorority letters on and you're like, oh, honey, like that ship has sailed. Like you got to get out of those. You got to like not wear, like that was me when I was 21 and I had just moved to New York City. And I remember, you know, like I was about 30 pounds heavier than I am now. And I remember feeling so exhausted just living in New York. Like this is what I always remind clients too when they come to me living in New York. I'm like, you are still better off than you think you are. Because living in New York is not easy. Like it is such an athletic endeavor to be in this city, going up and down subway stairs, carrying your groceries home, like walking everywhere, you know, like it's not nothing. So like I always try to remind people of that. But I remember when I first moved to New York, I was really out of shape. I was so tired. I was so exhausted. And I felt so like I did not feel like a front row bad bitch in any capacity when I was walking into these classes. But what I loved about Pilates is that it was one of the first workouts. Actually, it was like the only workout that I had ever found that talked to me and talked to everyone about their body in a way of how it worked versus how it looked.
Right.
I remember the instructors that I would go to, and I was very fortunate to find really good instructors, but, they talked a lot about like, okay, we're going to do a tricep kickback. It's going to help extend your elbow, or, we're going to do an overhead press so you can lift your groceries and carry them home like comfortably without dying, versus like all of the other fitness classes I had taken up to that point were pretty much like, okay, tone your arms. We want a smaller waist. We want a bigger butt, and it was really refreshing. And it was the first time I had ever really thought about my body and what it could do versus how it looked.
Right. Like
And
the
that
modalities of it, as opposed to
exactly
just fitting this script.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
was such a breath of fresh air. And that is something that stays with me today as an instructor, and something that is always how I cue whenever I'm teaching clients or teaching my classes. It's about what it can do. And I also think there's so much knowledge in just knowing what your muscles and what your body does, instead of just like thinking about how it looks, because we're not taught that ever.
Which is crazy, because
It
I
is
feel like even when
crazy.
we're growing up and we're in, physical fitness, like PE
Yeah.
classes, and
Great opportunity.
you don't
to
really
get
learn
myths.
about these different exercises and conditioning methods that will, help you build muscle in a certain area, or even just like help you have more length and help
Yeah.
you carry your groceries,
Exactly.
or, fold your laundry, like that shoulder strength,
Or
that
like
back
dance
strength.
until like you dance all night. Like,
Like just the everyday things, and like learning how our
Exactly.
body actually works, as opposed to just like, all right, let's
run
kick
the
your ass into
mile
shape
or
now.
play
Yeah.
dodgeball. Like I'm
Go
like,
play dodgeball, yeah.
or like, like I think back to like my high school health classes, which were like so quintessential, like Coach Carr from Mean Girls, where, they're like, don't have sex, don't do drugs, don't do anything. And you're like, okay. I'm like, imagine if you, instead of just like telling me not to do any of these things, which we all ended up doing anyway, what if you had just like taught me about my body and like,
Yeah, like the science behind it.
right, like that would have been a much better use of all of our time,
Right.
And I think that's like so important, and it really is so helpful, because I think if you're someone who struggles with their body and like, I don't think, when I was brand new and I was just figuring it out, those words didn't mean much to me. Like, oh, like tone your arm. Like I never had tone in my arm. So to tell me to tone my arm, like I had never even wrapped my head around like what that would look like. You know what I mean? Or, especially I think with my stomach, like when instructors say things like, oh, we want to get like the 6-pack muscles, or, we want to like get washboard abs. It's like
Right.
your core muscles are like so important for truly like your entire well-being and health. Like if your core muscles are dysfunctional and not working well, you're not going to be able to breathe properly, truly. Like
Yeah.
that's how serious it is. Or, like so many women that I work with, they have pelvic floor dysfunction and don't know. And, I know abs for so many of us are like such a thing we like to focus on for aesthetic reasons, but going beyond the aesthetic reasons and focusing on the functional reasons is so essential, and it's so missed
Right.
so often of the time.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
I know we've talked about diet a little bit.
Yeah.
But this kind of reminded me. I know that a lot of personal trainers or fitness experts will tell you to be in a calorie deficit.
Mhm.
And these are the workouts you need to be doing,
Totally.
X, Y, and Z. What is your opinion on that? Because I feel like that is pushed so hard in this industry.
Yeah.
And it's just something that I always like asking people that are experts,
Yeah.
because I feel like everybody kind of has like a different opinion about it.
Totally. So I think one of the reasons where it really stems from is I think right now it's just so attractive if you are a fitness entrepreneur in the space, to sell, people want to be told what to do. Like I can't tell you how many times I've met with clients for the first time and they're like, just tell me exactly what to do. And I'm like, okay, this like is never going to work, because
Right.
I
a
can
two-way
tell
street.
you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. I think depending on the professional in question, giving nutritional guidelines is most of the time outside of scope for a fitness professional, unless they are a certified nutritionist. And even then, if you're someone who does really need support with your diet, if you have a history of eating disorders, if you have any, underlying conditions, if you have autoimmune, like anything, you really shouldn't necessarily go to a fitness coach and ask them to make you a meal plan. You should be going to a registered dietitian. Fortunately, nowadays, I feel like there are a lot of dietitians who accept insurance. So if you have decent insurance, it can be like a pretty nominal amount to go see a dietitian, which is always like my first line of defense whenever clients need help. Actually, I'll backpedal that a little bit. If clients, I can and I do give general guidelines myself. If, a client comes to me, and I know they're pretty, what I like to call a garden variety client, obviously we'll touch on a few things, making sure you're eating vegetables, making sure you're eating enough protein. Protein is like what I always recommend. I recommend for all clients to get at least 100 grams. And if they like look at me like I have 10 heads and they're like, well, right now I get like 40 grams a day. I'm like, okay, let's, do the low hanging fruit first and see what we can improve. And, then we'll go from there. But if I'm working with a client who I know has a history of disordered eating, or I know has other things going on, or is really just needs a lot of support, and I've been doing this for a lot of years. And I mean, like, I typically can sense out when a client, even if I'm on the fence, if I'm like, okay, like you could really benefit from talking to someone else, because also too, I find this not only with movement, but especially with food. Sometimes it is a lot like therapy. Like I joke, like sometimes I'm a Pilates instructor, but most of the time I'm a therapist. You know what I mean? That with love. A lot of things come out when you talk about these things. And, obviously I have a great relationship with all of my clients, and I feel very like, happy and humbled that they can come to me with anything, and that, we can chat about it and I can help them. But I also really believe in guiding people to where they need the help from, and like if I can help you, amazing. But if I think you need more help, I'm going to point you in the direction of where you need to go. And I think a lot of trainers nowadays would be wise to think about that.
Yeah, I think the moment I kind of let go of all of those stereotypes of what you need to do whenever it comes to exercise and movement,
Yeah.
and let go of the control, was the moment I actually started to see results, and my body was like thanking me for it.
Yeah.
And I think whenever you're so stressed out about the way your body looks and your results and
It totally impacts you.
all of those different things, it definitely impacts you, and it doesn't make you feel good.
No.
And I think you need to find a way to make yourself feel good and to get past that, because I think that's like the number one thing that I wish I could tell my younger self is don't put so much pressure on yourself, enjoy the journey, and appreciate your body for what it does for you.
100%.
So I know you're like super into like wellnessy podcasts.
I am a wellness girly. I am a CMOS girly. I don't know if you ever listen to their podcast or like follow along with them, but like I am deep. I am in like my Gwyneth Paltrow era of just like I'm like doing all the hippy dippy shit. And I did like get into that, I think, like close to my wedding. But I also think that really particular interest also really stemmed from the fact that I felt like I was in this period of time for myself where I was lifting like crazy and like doing everything right.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point and to your same experience, like I didn't feel good.
Right.
Like I was doing all of the workouts and I was, eating what I thought I should be eating. And I like didn't feel good. And
you weren't having fun.
I wasn't having fun. I was not having fun. I wanted my mom to come pick me up.
You know what they say about learning new languages?
Yeah.
You have to find a way to make it fun.
Yes.
That's the only way that you can become multilingual is
Totally.
if you find a functionality of it to make it fun.
Yes.
And I think it kind of goes hand in hand with exercise and movement too, and also your diet, like, or even just wellness as a whole.
Yeah.
You have to find a way to make it fun or enjoy it.
Exactly.
So I love that you're experimental and you're in your Gwyneth Paltrow era.
And I'm really enjoying it. I've never felt like healthier and just not even like I also sometimes like really resent that word in the space. Like, oh, like what is it to be healthier? Like we don't have a test that we can take and be like, ooh, I'm healthier, but I'm happier.
Yeah.
And I think that's also so important. And the best advice I can give anyone is, don't worry about what your best friend is doing. Don't worry about even like what your trainer's doing. And sometimes I tell my clients that I'm like, don't look at what I'm doing. My body's different than yours. And that might seem like, whoa, but it's true. Like, don't worry about what anybody else is doing. You have to answer to yourself at the end of the day. Like, are you happy? Is this sustainable for you? Like that was the other thing when I was in a period where I was really working out like a mad woman. I was not happy. I was so tired all the time. Like I would crawl into bed and be wiped and just not like I had no energy for other things. Like the weekend would roll around and I would just be grateful that I could get to sleep.
Yeah.
And that's no way to live. Like you should be
No.
like grateful to like wake up and get to go to brunch.
Right.
Like
live for today.
Exactly.
Don't live until 5 o'clock. Don't live until Friday.
exactly.
Find a way to be present and enjoy the moment.
And yeah, I mean, and that being said too, even on like the idea of wellness, like I'm also a big Huberman fan, Andrew
Yeah.
Huberman, love Huberman. I mean, also like, I wish obviously you can also watch his podcast on YouTube, which I very much recommend because he's very easy on the eyes. But like if you do the Huberman protocols, like you're going to make yourself insane.
Yeah. So
And-
many people have benefited though from his sleep protocols.
Well, that is like one thing that I am completely out of all of like I try not to be super rigid about anything anymore, but I will say like one thing that is a non-negotiable for me is sleep.
Yeah.
Sleep is so important. In fact, I tell clients this and I really preach this. If your sleep is not in check, nothing else matters. Your workouts don't matter. Your nutrition doesn't matter. If you are not sleeping, you are not going to see results.
Yeah.
Period.
How many hours do you sleep a night?
8.
So I was a grandma last night and I was telling the engineers this earlier. And I went to bed at 8 p.m. last night and I woke up at 4 a.m.
Oh, I love that for you.
It was so weird. I had never done that before.
That
was
is
so
my
weird.
sleep.
But I love it. I have
routine.
so much energy.
Isn't it? So,
Yeah.
I do wake up super early. I'm a morning person and I recognize that. Like my whole family is like this, by the way. Like my dad like wakes up at 4 a.m. and like that's like normal for him. I usually go to bed at 7:30.
I love that.
I'm not necessarily asleep, but the skincare routine is done. I'm in the pajamas. Like we are lying down. We are tech free because I wake up at 3:45, 4 a.m. most mornings. And I meditate first thing when I wake up. So it's not like a hard jump out of bed, and get the day going. I'm a really slow person when it comes to getting ready.
Mhm.
So I really savor my mornings. It's also, one thing I will say, like my clients, I usually start training at 6 or 6:30 every morning. And I love my clients to death. I just need to do something for myself before I do something for them.
Yeah.
So, my morning routine is very important to me. My sleep routine is very important to me. I wake up, I do take like 2 hours to get ready. I do a little walk in the morning. I meditate. I cook a really big breakfast. In fact, breakfast is my biggest meal of the day. That's what works for me. So I really take time to savor my morning before I go out and serve other people.
Right. Yeah. Walk us through that whole morning routine. I know you kind of gave us like a glimpse of it.
Yeah.
And then maybe your night routine, like sleep
yeah.
routine too. Because I think that's super helpful for a lot of people just to like hear what other people do so maybe they can get inspiration from it and like feed it into their own.
Totally. And I think, going back on everything we've talked about, all of these things stem from the fact that they are just like what make me happy. They're what I need to be like a nice human every single day, which is what I think we all aspire to be. So I wake up at 3:45, sometimes like 3:45, 4, depending on the day, depending exactly what time I need to be out the door. First thing I do in the morning is I pop in a meditation. I use the app Insight Timer. I love Insight Timer. I'm so happy you know about them because I think it's really the best meditation app.
I agree. I think it's a lot of variety.
Yes. And it also doesn't feel so robotic or monotone. I know there are a lot of other apps that obviously offer meditations, but I think there's really something for everyone on Insight Timer, which I really like.
I feel like the best way to describe it is kind of like the Spotify for meditation.
Yes. I usually call it like the YouTube of meditation
that's
teachers
a good one.
too. Because I'm like, you could find someone living on the other half of the world. There's someone who I love. I can't think of his name at this moment. He is so wonderful, but he has this, Jason McGrice. He has this amazing meditation for body image. And when I tell you, it saved me when I was in a really dark place with my body. I think I listened to it every day for like a month straight, and it really just like touched my soul in such a way. But that is what I do every morning, first thing. And that I don't even get out of bed for. Like my dog kind of hears me like wake up and he comes snuggle with me and then we meditate together. And then I get out of bed, and then I do my skincare, my getting ready routine. I do walk first thing in the mornings. Usually I love to walk to work, but now because it's this time of year, it's so dark out, I usually will walk like 30 minutes in the morning. I sip my morning water and I sort of just like ease into my day that way. I usually watch a TV show as I do this. Like I'm currently watching The Crown. This is how I get my TV time in.
I love The Crown.
I like couldn't get into it a year ago and now I'm back in.
I feel like I've learned so much from watching it.
Yes.
There's like little things from history pertaining to the royals that I just had no idea happened. It's like so scandalous.
It is such an enjoyable watch, and it's nice because it's not like a jumpy show, you know what I mean? There is drama, but it's like it's just pleasant. So, or I also watch, my other guilty pleasure is Bake Off, Great British Bake Off, which I just finished this season. That just like
people are obsessed with that.
I love Bake Off. That was my March 2020 show. It like got me through the pandemic. I also I do call it my therapy show. Like whenever I'm sad, I put on Great British Bake Off.
So do you put this on in the morning before your walk?
Yeah. Okay. I like have my iPad stacked on like a bunch of yoga blocks, so it's right at eye level, so I'm not straining my neck. And I go for my little walk. I get my matcha going shortly after, get my breakfast going. I do my makeup, I get ready. And then I slip out the door. It's actually really nice. Like my husband, sorry, just got, he got that promotion. He's a morning person too. So it's nice because we also get to touch base in the mornings. But he's in business school. So 2 nights a week, I don't really see him. And also because I do go to bed so early, sometimes we miss each other Monday through Thursday when it's just okay, you have work to do. I need to go to sleep because I have to be up at the crack of dawn. So, that is my morning routine. I do cook a really big breakfast in the morning. That is a non-negotiable for me. I almost always have eggs and I drink a lot of matcha, as I feel like we've talked about before.
Oh, absolutely. We're matcha whores.
I usually have 3 matchas a day, which sometimes I tell people that and they look at me like I'm insane. And I'm like, you drink 5 cups of coffee. How's this any different?
It's great for anti-inflammatory.
I know.
And it has
that L-theanine, and we love matcha.
Yeah,
but
it's medicine.
It is medicine. It is especially this time of year. I mean, I drink hot drinks all year long. I'm never really an ice girly. And especially this time of year, to just sit and sip.
You're such a European.
If the shoe fits. I did just get back from Portugal and I was like, wow, this is so nice.
Oh my God.
I could really see myself living here.
I know, same. I went in August. Yeah. It was just beautiful.
I loved it. We were in Lisbon and it was an amazing experience. I know you've been to Barcelona and where else did you go? You've been to Spain this summer too. Was it just Barcelona or did you go to
I did Madrid and Barcelona. Okay. And I did that by myself, which was wild. Yeah. 10 out of 10 recommend.
I actually love Lisbon more than Barcelona.
Whoa.
I haven't been to Madrid, but I was kind of going into the trip expecting it to be a lot like Spain or at least comparable. And I have to say, Portugal really blew my mind.
It's really lovely. It rained the entire time I was in Lisbon, so I didn't have the best experience, but I loved the Algarve.
Yeah.
And I really want to go to Porto.
Yeah. We didn't get to Porto, but I have a girlfriend who's getting married in Lisbon next year. So I'm great, we're going back. We'll add on Porto. I'm a huge Harry Potter fan, and I did not know, but Porto is actually where Harry Potter was written.
Oh, I did not know that.
I know. I think it was just the first book. So the more you know.
Sick.
But I also heard Porto is lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to hear your sleep routine.
Okay, sleep routine. we got a little something there.
No, it's okay.
My sleep routine, I think first and foremost, a big one for me, and this is my number one piece of advice to clients too, is I usually put away my phone at 5:30. My notifications, I kind of always live my life on do not disturb, and I just prefer it that way. I actually talk with my friend Rob about this all the time because he's the same way. And it's not my phone is almost always nearby, but it's true. Like, I just don't want to be disturbed.
Like, if something
You know
is
what I
that
mean?
important,
Like,
somebody's going to let you know.
Exactly. Like, that is truly like my approach. Like, if something's really an emergency, someone will find a way to contact me.
Well, I think if you call again.
Yes, I have my settings set up like that.
Right. Yeah. So really, we rely so much on our phones and it causes so much anxiety.
It really
I
is.
always have my message alerts off
Yeah.
and my friends will kick me
But like
for doing it.
Like how I pick up my phone every 5 minutes. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I will see your message. I might just not see. I don't want to be notified of it. Like, I will see it.
I will say I am a little guilty of this. Sometimes I will see messages and I'm like, okay, I'll just reply to that later, and then I'll forget.
100%. I leave them unread until I can respond.
Right.
And then I'm like, okay, like, because I always like to be at inbox 0.
Ah.
You know, I hate having a little red bubble.
I'm the same way.
Get rid of that notification.
Those people stress me out.
Same. I'm like, my husband's like that. He has like 3,000 unread emails, and I'm like, I please want to sweat and like my skin crawl. But I do like get rid of my phone. I never sleep with my phone. I actually keep it on a charger in my kitchen. And I put it face down. So once it's like plugged in and charging, like I'll check to make sure my alarm is on for the next morning. And then I try not to really look at it, because, and also too, like I have a lot of trainer friends who are like, oh, but what if like one of your clients needs you? I'm like, my clients and everyone I love at this point knows that I'm not going to look at my phone until the next morning. So it's fine, like, and I think, again, this is something that takes time, but I think we've created the expectation to always be available. And that's a boundary I think we all could do better with having is like, actually, no, you don't need to be available. I kind of like I think even, a couple of weeks ago when, like the fight between Israel and the Hamas broke out. And I had a lot of friends who were really like absolutely distraught over it, and rightfully so. I mean, I feel like everyone was distraught. It's very upsetting news. I tried to, like one of my friends, it really impacted her personally. She studied abroad in Tel Aviv. She was really, really distraught. And I tried to, tell her, and like, we have to remember, like, think about like if our parents or our grandparents lived through that, and they did. I mean, Lord knows they lived through a lot of bad world news and a lot of like horrific events in their lifetimes as well. But they had the morning news and the nighttime news. And that was it. Like, you didn't really have like this constant stream of information and news. And that is something I think is really draining on all of our health without realizing it, is having, and I'm not saying like don't be informed, don't like care, like don't care about your messages, don't care what's going on, but give yourself permission to say, I don't need to be plugged in constantly. And that like, and I think like Huberman has a podcast on it about like the dopamine effect that social media and like phone and, just the consumption that it brings. Like it does release dopamine every time we check our phones. But like being aware of just being like, this is a no thank you. It's going off. It's going away. I don't want to look at it for the remainder of the night is like a very healthy habit to have. So that is like the first step of my nighttime routine is just say like, I'm done. Like I'm not looking at this until, the next morning.
Yeah. Something that I actually learned from Reese Witherspoon, she makes all of her kids, or she used to, I don't think they like live at home anymore, but she would make her whole family charge their phones like in the living room.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't be allowed into the bedroom.
Yeah.
So they would like set alarms.
We
and
have
have to like get up and go turn it off, which I feel like is so helpful. Just like create that space and that boundary where you don't have your phone or any sort of tech and leave it behind. And, there's a new day where you can get right back on it if you need to.
I think like, and this is a theme that I think also occurs with food or with money. Like if you're someone who has like a shopping habit, speaking to myself here.
Same.
But like you can remember that it'll be there for you the next day, And like that's what I think like we've sometimes lost with our phones is like we always feel so obligated to be like instantly connected and we don't. So first step of the nighttime routine, get rid of the phone. Then I almost always shower at night. I like love sleeping in a clean bed. And also like we live in New York City. It's gross, man. Like
You're coded the same.
I talk about this all the time because like one of my really good friends, she feels the same. Her fiance does not. But like if me and my husband go out for a night and I don't care how late we come home. Like, we've come home from raves at like 5 in the morning. And I'm like, you are getting in the shower. Like, you are not getting in our bed. And he's like, why? And I'm like, because you're gross. Like, okay, so then we shower. We like degross ourselves from the grit that is New York City. And then full skincare routine. I'm a huge skincare girly. I love, like, I'll honestly bring my iPad into the bathroom as I do my skincare routine because it takes me like 30 minutes. And I mean, obviously, like, I'm doing other things in between.
Right.
And like sometimes my husband will be like talking to me as I do it because he's like, okay, I want to hang out with you and I want to like, chat and catch up. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm doing my skincare routine. So he'll literally pull a chair over and like sit with me as I do my skincare. So because it does take a while if you're committed. So I do my whole skincare routine. And then I usually crawl into bed. I do my breath work as I read. So I'll just do some box breathing as I'm reading. I'm a big, like, I love to read before bed. I love a good book. Like, I've really kind of cut back. I used to watch TV all the time before bed, but when we moved into our current apartment, I really I was like, I don't want any tech in the bedroom. I don't want a TV in the bedroom. I do keep my iPad on my nightstand just so I can meditate in the next morning, but it like goes off and away. I also don't have my messages or my email synced to my iPad. So it's pretty much just like a giant like iPod Touch from 2011.
I love that.
So, and that's the bedtime routine. And also my dog like tucks himself in at like 6:30. Like he's like ready for bed.
What's his
So
name?
Chickpea.
Chickpea. That is the cutest name ever.
He's a cutie. He's really like the light of our lives.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. I have one last question for you.
Hit me.
So maybe Chickpea's along for the ride too. But if you were to drink a martini in a bikini, where would you be and what would you be drinking?
Oh man, espresso martini, obviously. And I mean, you can't do an espresso martini on the beach. That's sacrilegious. I would probably be drinking espresso martini in Gustad in like a fabulous ski outfit. I love winter too, and like 'tis the season.
Yeah.
So, well, I guess if we're in a bikini, Gustad still.
Well, you could do like Kendall
with, like,
Jenner style.
Yes,
She always
like,
does like shoots like in the snow.
Exactly. I was just gonna say we'll have a hot tub, some espresso teenies. Like that is the vibe.
This is original. I haven't heard
With the
say
Swiss
this
mountains
before.
in the background. Done.
A lot of people have similar answers. That's actually the most unique one I've had.
Oh my God, I'm so flattered.
Yeah.
Love an espresso martini.
So good.
Caffeinate and get a little drunk at the same time.
Yeah.
The best combo.
You know what we need to invent? Like a matcha martini.
Do you know I had a matcha cocktail at my wedding?
Shut up.
So our two signature cocktails, my husband loves an espresso martini. That's definitely like an us cocktail that we always get out. But our second signature cocktail was a pina colada with matcha in it. And it was amazing.
That sounds so
I love a pina
good.
colada. A pina colada is my other favorite, like, guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
People who don't like pina coladas are lying to themselves.
They are lying. I don't trust people that don't like pina coladas.
Like, I think, like, pina colada, like, it's not a cool thing to say you like a pina colada, but, like.
It's a red flag to not like a pina colada.
You can't deny a pina colada is so good.
Why is it so refreshing? And it like
just
feeds the inner child for some reason, even though it's like an alcoholic beverage. I'm like,
I think it's because I used to get like virgin pina.
Yeah.
Like I would go on vacation and my parents would be like having a glass of wine. My parents aren't really big drinkers. They don't do cocktails. It wasn't until like I was an adult that I like really figured out like what cocktails were for real. But like they would take me on vacation and they'd be like, and a virgin pina colada for her.
oh my
And I mean,
gosh.
essentially it's a milkshake.
Yeah.
It's divine.
Well, we have our good sugar green juices here. So it's basically, so it's chlorophyll, celery, kale, some other greens that I don't remember.
Sounds healthy.
But it's so good. And I know we did not drink any of it, but I'm going to cheers you for coming on today,
Cheers.
Emi.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad we got to chat. And
Me
got
too.
To do
This
all
was
the
such an
fitness
amazing
things.
conversation. And I feel like you gave like so many important tips and just advice for people that are wanting to get into fitness, or maybe they're already in the game and they just need some reassurance and some empowerment. So I really appreciate you for all of just your knowledge and amazingness. And hopefully you can come on again.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I feel like there's still so much for us to talk about.
I know. I feel like we could sit here for another hour. But like, thank you so much for having me. It's been such a blast.
Absolutely. Well, All right, guys. So remember to like, rate, and subscribe to this podcast if you liked this episode. Follow Emi. And if you want to follow her, I'm going to give you the space to say how they can get connected and be friends.
You can follow me on Instagram. I'm Emi Moves, EMIMOVES.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next week. Ta-ta.
Truly, most of the time, you are not there for no reason, and you're not where you are for no reason, and you have to just remind yourself that. And that's what I remind myself, and then I feel a little bit better.
Think of what you can do to just slow down your heart rate, make yourself feel a little better, going on a walk, meditating, Pilates class.
You're manifesting, you're setting yourself up to start that journey of whatever you're manifesting.